Полтора года.
Добрый день.
Полтора года прошло после последней такой прямой линии. Кстати сказать, полтора года прошло после начала вашего второго срока. Как вы оцените это время?
Я не буду сейчас называть большое количество цифр, перечислять все, что было сделано или чего не удалось, и этого тоже достаточно. Скажу о главном. Продолжалось
mentioned what I think is the most important.
хорошее, позитивное
We have continued to have
на
a
протяжении всех
positive
последних лет
trend in our economy.
экономики России.
The growth of the Russian economy has been
Это показатель, который намного превышает
very substantial, and our growth rate is much higher than the growth rate of many developed countries and transition countries. We are not absolute leaders, but we are among the leaders.
рост составил 7,1%.
Last year, our growth was 7.1%, and
Предварительно мы считаем, что
this year,
9.
the preliminary figure is 5.9, and this is a good number.
Другие вещи позитивного характера. Прежде всего, это касается
And there are many other positive trends as a result. First of all, a higher standard of living of the people.
реальные доходы за минусом инфляции составляют где-то около 8,5-9-10%.
Рост реальных доходов.
Рост реальных доходов населения. При этом несколько отстает рост реальных доходов пенсионеров. Это примерно на уровне 5,5%. В этом году будет чуть больше, 7,9%. У нас двойной профицит и внешней торговли, и бюджета. У нас растут золотовалютные резервы Центрального банка, которые достигли 155 миллиардов долларов. Напомню,
155 billion.
с 12 миллиардов.
Last year, we started with 12 billion.
И по этому показателю 16% к валовому внутреннему продукту страны мы имеем один из лучших уже показателей в Европе. У нас создан стабилизационный фонд, который
The stabilization fund has been created. In other countries, it is called the Fund for the Future Generations. I think we'll discuss this later, whether we need this fund or we don't, or what to do with it. But overall, this is a very stable situation.
расширились горизонты планирования
We
на
have
уровне
a
бизнеса и в семье.
horizon, a great horizon for planning in the country and in the families. And we now have the prerequisites to start working on the social issues and to start working on some sectors of the Russian economy. Well, thank you very much. Of course, this is not for us, but
in the 12 cities, in big cities and the small cities. And the Far East is now on air. Sakhalin Island. In Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, it's 7 o'clock, 7 p.m., and Igor Kozhevin, our correspondent, isn't there. Please, your questions to the President of Russia.
the capital of the only Russian region that is fully located, situated on islands. In Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, we are ready to have this direct line to the Kremlin. So whose question is the first one? Who would like to start?
So your name, please. Kiseleva Irina. I'm an accountant. Good afternoon, Mr. President. I live in Sakhalin for more than 20 years. I work out of the city limits, and I have to use my own private car. And the increase in oil prices made me horrified. So today, it's about 21 rubles for 1 liter, and it's in the oil regions. So what do we have to expect from oil prices in the new year?
Of course, this is a question of great current importance, not only for Sakhalin, but for the entire country, because the hike in gasoline prices is something that we've seen recently. We had the peak prices in the beginning of the autumn, And there are a number of reasons for this. First of all, the Russian economy is integrating in the world economy, and this carries a number of benefits. Most of them are benefits, but there are also problems. And one is that the general growth in the price of resources, oil and gas and oil products, the overall growth in the prices, this is something that is reflected in our country. But there are also some specific questions that the government should address, and it will be addressing in the coming months. First of all, there is an agreement with the leading oil companies, and there are not too many leading oil companies, and there is a problem there because they monopolize the markets. 8 biggest oil companies have the various regions of the Russian Federation, and they decide in those regions. But there are also questions that the government should address at its own level. What are those questions? First of all, the issues of taxation. I would like to tell you that of the revenues of the oil companies and the oil and gas sector companies, they get only 20% of the revenues. The rest is taken from them as taxation and other payments to the state. This, of course, creates a situation that is quite complex for the consumers, because a lot of those payments and taxes, for example, the extraction tax, resource extraction tax, and the import duty, this affects directly the internal prices of oil in our country, and therefore the government is considering the possibility of changing that system in order to make this a more balanced system, so that the budget has revenues, but at the same time this system should not result in higher prices for gasoline and also for diesel fuel, which is very important for the army and agriculture, and soon these decisions will be prepared by the government.
We're waiting for more questions, please.
Yes, indeed. We have a number of young people here in the square. They want to ask questions. Yes, please. Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Denis, and I am a second-year student of the Sakhalin State University. I come from Yuzhno-Kurilsk, and I'm not alone here. There are a number of people here from the same place, and we have the same question. We are all students, but soon we will be graduating from the institute, and we probably will want to continue to live here and for the benefit of the Kurils. But our question is, how will these territories develop, whether we will be able to have a decent life here? And the question with Japan. How will that be decided? What problem? Well, whether the islands will be given to the Japanese, the Southern Kuril Islands. Well, first of all, so far as the Far East is concerned, we have a federal target program, and this program will continue to be implemented. As you know, recently a group of ministers went to the Far East on my instruction, and they are planning for the continued development of the Far East with support from the federal center, and all of those programs will be implemented. That is my first point, and this is fully guaranteed. We understand the problems related to the Far East, the movement of people, the high prices of the air tickets and railway tickets, the outflow of the people from the Far East. We know about those problems, and it is difficult to solve them now, but we will concentrate the finances and all our efforts to solve those problems. So I very much hope that you and your friends who live and study and work in the Far East, including on the islands, will have the conditions in place for you to apply your efforts and your knowledge where you live and work. As for the negotiating process with Japan, about the Kuril Islands. This is the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation under international law. These are the results, the outcome of World War II, and so far as this is concerned, we have no plans to discuss anything. We are ready to negotiate, and we are negotiating from this standpoint. We want to settle all the issues in dispute with all our neighbors, including Japan, with whom we are linked by a relationship of good neighborliness, which is improving every year. And because of objective reasons, both Russia and Japan want to improve our economic and cultural and other relations and want to cooperate in all kinds of areas. The question that you raised is, of course, a very sensitive issue for Japan and for Russia. I hope, and actually I am sure, that with the goodwill which Russia does have, we will find the solution that will be acceptable to both sides and that will benefit people who live in those territories and would also benefit the people of both Russia and Japan. Those possibilities are available and could be found if we work together. It is 7 p.m. in Sakhalin, so let's allow them another question before it's too late. Yes, indeed, we have questions. Maxim Borovsky. I am a leader of a dance club, and my question is about cars. The right side steering wheel, will that be prohibited? We're not planning any prohibitions. That's what I can say. But there is the problem of safety. You know the terrible tragedy that happened in Altai, where the governor of the Altai region who died in that crash. And the accident involved one car with the right side steering wheel, and the driver in that car did not see anything. So there are quite a few incidents of this kind, but no prohibition is being planned. I am not familiar with any plans to prohibit the right side wheel. As for generally the plans for the development of the automobile industry, an important sector in the Russian economy, the government has taken a number of decisions that to which our people reacted in different ways. But let me tell you, all of those decisions are aimed at creating conditions to produce automobiles in the Russian Federation, in our territory, and many companies are working here in Russia. For example, BMW and some Asian companies produce cars in Russia. We are negotiating with Volkswagen, with Mercedes, and other companies. If our economy and our territory are good enough for the Western and other companies are not good enough for the Western companies to produce here, and if we only import, then we will not have a proper development of our economy. Of course, the decisions should be mild toward the consumer. They should not really damage the interests of the consumer, but the decisions, I think, have already given some positive effect.
Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, thank you very much. Our correspondent Igor Kozhevin was in there, and then we turn to another district.
We'll have more from the various cities, but now let's go to the call center in Moscow. Natalia Semenikhina is there. We've been told that in the 10 minutes of this hotline, thousands of telephone calls and SMS messages have been received. Now, Natasha, please.
Mr. President, hello. Katya and Sergey, we are working for the 5 full days, and there are lots of calls coming in. So I will tell you just rough figures. It's about 845,000 telephone calls. SMS messages are also coming in. There are about 40,000 about them. And so now we do have calls from abroad, from foreign countries. So, talking about Russia, the most active are central regions and Siberia and Volga region. The main topics are of the social character, but there are lots of works about municipal services, medicine, mortgage loan, law, and the army issues. We do have lots of private questions, but I won't tell you the statistics and turn to those who were put through. We do have call from Yeisk.
Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Good afternoon. Recently, we have seen more and more homeless children in our streets. I'm told that there are more homeless children today than after the Civil War. Is there any way that this problem could be solved? Thank you. Yes, this is a problem that is very severe, and I think we are all sensitive to it. This is because of the well-known situation in the 1990s and the mid-1990s when the institution of the family was undermined. There are many homeless children of whom parents are alive, and this is different from the situation after the Civil War that you recalled. At that time, there were homeless children because their parents died in World War I or the Civil War. Now we have many homeless children whose parents are alive and well. But whatever the sources of that problem, the problem is real. And of course, the government should pay more attention to this problem than until recently. I've been pushing the government to address this issue. We have programs to address this issue. We will be allocating funds and resources, including for strengthening the family and adoption. I have many questions here. How to strengthen the institution of adoption, how to strengthen orphanages. We're planning to do this. We will be doing this. Another question.
So we do have more than 10,000 questions, and the town of Klin is on air. So please ask your question now.
Good afternoon. My name is Konstantin Nikitenko. My question is this. The stabilization fund continues to grow with the higher oil prices, but nothing has been done until recently. Now you have announced a social reform. Where is the guarantee that the money will not be stolen? Well, I'm very concerned about this, and this is one of the key problems that we will need to address in implementing the plans in the social sphere that were announced, that were formulated by me on September the 5th when I announced those initiatives. Yes, indeed. As I said in the very beginning, as a result of the growth of our economy and the growing revenue, this is not related to the stabilization fund, because stabilization fund is a different story. I will address that later if I have a chance, but the stabilization fund is not for addressing social issues. The stabilization fund is to make sure that the macroeconomic situation continues to be good, so that the economy does not unravel, so that we don't have too much inflation, so that we have the conditions to solve the social problems within the coordinates that we have and that we are planning. But the social spending of the budget is growing, and the possibility of addressing such tasks as a result of the growing economy is better now than before. When such significant amounts of money are allocated for agriculture, for healthcare. The tremendous resources will be allocated. In some areas, the growth of the allocation will be 63%. In some areas, there will be 100 or 200% growth in the spending, and so there is the question of controlling. How do we verify, how do we control that spending? And I very much hope that the Parliament, the deputies of local parliaments also will really oversee it, will have oversight of this, control it. The civil society, various non-governmental organizations. Why am I speaking about the local legislatures? Well, this is because some programs will be co-financed from the regional sources as well. So this public control should be efficient. I very much hope that this will be the case. We'll go back to the call center later. The telephone number of the call center is 800-200-4040. And as we have said, there were 3.5 thousand SMS messages. There are more mobile phones today now in our country than fixed phones. There is also the number 0404 040 040 for the SMS messages. We will now have questions from Siberia. Siberia, Tomsk. Our reporter in Tomsk is Alexander Merakov. You have the floor, please. Good afternoon. Tomsk is greeting the President and all Russian citizens. In Tomsk, 1/5 of the population are students. And today, in Tomsk State University, we mostly have students and teachers of various Tomsk colleges. Your questions, please. Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Alexander. Starting 3 years ago, I graduated from the Department of Physics of Tomsk University, and I got my PhD last week. Congratulations. Thank you. Tomsk is indeed the city of students, and there are many students who continue postgraduate studies and then work as scientists. But then the results of their work are not always implemented. And I asked, I heard about these special areas for implementing the technical and scientific discoveries. I very much hope that this will be created in Tomsk, because that will make the life of our young scientists a lot better, a lot easier. But the fact is that many scientists now have better prospects abroad. People from the various international companies come to Tomsk and they invite our people, our scientists, to go abroad and work there. Why do we have this situation in our country, that it is easier to go abroad and succeed there rather than succeed here in Russia? Why is it that the work of younger scientists is not being implemented in the Russian economy? First of all, I'd like to say that your question represents concern, and your concern about the situation. But let me say that despite the problem of the brain drain from Russia, we can nevertheless say that it is good that the people who get education here are in great demand. That's good. Secondly, we have freedom of movement and the freedom to choose for our people, and in and of itself, this is a good thing. This is good for young scientists and young specialists too. But of course, it would be a lot better, a lot more interesting for our state, for our country, to create conditions so that our people can realize their potential, our scientists, our students, and even school students right here in our country. This is what we should work toward. We should create conditions for the people to apply their knowledge here in the Russian Federation. We should be competitive in creating such conditions. The government is developing a number of proposals in this regard. One of the steps, as you have said, is creating special areas, special implementation areas where conditions will be created for young scientists to to work in the high technology area. There will be several such zones, several such areas in the Russian Federation with proper financing and proper administrative, legal and taxation conditions. You have mentioned this. I would like to confirm that this is now on track, and this will be implemented very soon, starting January next year. And this is not all. One of the programs that I formulated in early September of this year, concerned education. And let me tell you what specifically is being prepared now. First of all, we will be selecting several what we call innovation colleges. The government at the federal level will be giving them additional financial support to buy laboratory equipment. It will also allocate additional money for for paying teachers, promising young teachers or prominent teachers, not only those who live and work here, but also those who are now abroad and would like to come to Russia. There will also be additional money allocated to implement new curricula. We are planning for these colleges to be selected on a competitive basis, and the government is now preparing procedures for selecting such colleges. And I suggest that you become involved in this competition and formulate your proposals for the Ministry of Education and Science. Additional grants will be allocated for scientists who are promising and have shown their ability, not only for those who have PhDs, but also others. We will be allocating 5,000 grants, $60,000 each to students, school students and young scientists. For specifically young scientists, as you may have heard, until 2010, their official income will go up and will be no less than 30,000 rubles. The budget network will be changed somewhat in the system of the Academy of Sciences, and we are also planning to create 2 new universities on a totally new basis, and the Academy of Sciences will be involved in creating those centers. One of them will be in the south and the other in Siberia. We will also be opening 2 new and modern-based schools of management, one in the Moscow region and one in St. Petersburg. All of this taken together, including also allocating additional funds for school education. We'll talk about that later. This, I think, will create conditions for young scientists who want to apply their knowledge here will be able to do that. Well, I saw some others. You spoke about those who don't yet have PhDs, and I saw them smiling, so they have plans. What's your other questions? Yes, please, more questions. A teacher wants to ask a question.
Hello, Mr. President. Good afternoon. My name is Galina Barasheva. I'm a professor of a Polytechnical Institute from Tomsk. In the nearest future, there's going to be the reduction of military training schools in the educational establishments. So we are worried if there are those who graduate from the universities will go directly to the army. So I do have a question. How does the army planning to accept the young specialists with higher education? And one more question. Do you think, Mr. President, that the base for the military reform and the basis for its success should be the increase of the soldier's life? What are you planning to do for this?
Doubtlessly, you're quite right. You know that this is the moral basis of any and perhaps first of all, a Russian army. Let's recall Suvorov. Let's recall our outstanding military commanders who always were told to take care of the Russian soldier. This is the moral basis of all our armed forces. This is the way it should be. You just said that about the reduction of the number of military training departments at higher college. We have 229 or something like that. I may err one or two units. There were not so many military departments in the Soviet Union when the Soviet Army had 5 million people. We have about a little over a million, 1,300,000. And the number of military training departments has grown sharply. The defense ministries consider that are being trained at these departments, they do not need so many departments at colleges. But the defense ministry have published, I don't know whether they published it or not. If not, they will be doing it very soon. The number of military training departments will be quite high. At the colleges that have such departments will be evenly distributed throughout the entire territory of the Russian Federation. And the young people who would like to acquire, besides the civil education at the military training departments, will be able to enroll at such colleges and universities. I repeat myself, they are evenly distributed throughout the entire territory of the Russian Federation. What additional plans are envisaged? All those who have already enrolled at a higher educational establishment where there is a military training program can quite easily complete their education there, and when they graduate from such colleges, they will not be called up to serve in the army. We're speaking only about those future students who will enroll next year, but they will know where there is a military training department at a college. This will be the conscientious choice of each and every person. And last but not least, we plan from January the 1st, 2008, there will be only 12 months service. This changes the whole picture. You must agree with me. Moreover, half of the year who has come to serve, be called up to the army, will be in the training unit. The second half of the year will be make his own choice, whether he will be serving in ordinary units. After 6 months, he signs a contract, and for a period of 3 years at least, will be serving on a contract basis. Incidentally, for young people who serve according to contract, they will have all the necessary conditions in order to, after enroll at a higher educational establishment after their term of service is over. They will have courses, prep training courses. At these courses, while undergoing education, they will be receiving their salaries as a contract basis for 1 more year. That, in general, is being planned in the area of a military reform connected with education. Thank you very much. Tomsk.
Now we have Kami region on air and the city of Vorkuta. Well, we have a correspondent, Ilya Kulikov, working in the city of Vorkuta.
Good day. Vorkuta is greeting you beyond the Arctic Circle, the center of the coal mining area. Our first question concerns the development of this particular branch of the economy. How do you do, Mr. Vladimir Vladimirovich? I'm Sergei Nikolaevich Burkov. My question is the following. Yes, indeed, we are concerned about the development of the coal industry. Everyone knows that great attention is now being directed towards the gas and oil. The reserves for gas and oil for 350 years. the coal reserves in our area for about 5 centuries. Does the state intend to change its priorities? Of course, we are worried mainly about Vorkuta. I understand your question. As far as I can understand the situation in Vorkuta, slow but sure, it's trying to get up to the reach the level of the other coal areas, Kuzbas in particular. Of course, there are a great many problems that must be solved here. What concerns the reserves of coal, oil and gas, I think that the reserves of our country for gas and oil have been underestimated. In reality, the reserves are much greater than we think. And I think these reserves will be enough for us and for our future generations. Of course, we must take a very economic approach to this issue. You are quite right. We must change the energetic balance, so to speak, in our country so that other energy resources, not only oil and gas, would be in demand and be favorable from the economic and attractive from the economic point of view, both for the economy and for the ordinary users. Such a resource as coal is very, very important, as I think that we will be supporting all those working in this area, including in involving high-tech technologies. You specialists know this better than I do. There are such technologies when reprocessing coal can transform it from an initial raw material into excellent energy products. These are quite costly technologies. We realize this. We also try to plan it this way so that we're able to employ such technologies and create conditions for promoting business in this area. I would like to wish you success. Thank you for your question.
Ilya, we can ask another question to the president, please.
Hello, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Good day. I'm a doctor, have been working in Vorkuta for more than 20 years. At the moment, we see quite a number of people of the elderly age are in the area of the far north. There are certain agents. We have people about 90 years old come to their clinic or hospital. How is the program for resettling pensioners from the far north to other areas? Because the local authorities do not have the funds for. These funds are being received from various sources, including from the federal budget. So far, the government cannot finally resolve this issue that concerns preserving the pensions in their full volume for those who are leaving the far north, so as not to stimulate the return of people, because some of the citizens that have left this area are trying to come back and receive their full pension. Of course, the government must resolve this issue, and we shall always, once again, return to this. I understand the problem is there. We'll return to it by all means.
Ilya, we can ask another question to the president. We'll ask the girl in here. My name is Maria. I'm a student. Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, I have a question. The Leningrad University had a branch in the Vorkuta city, and it's been here for 45 years. And now they stop enrolling students at this university because the Komi region could not find money to finance the tuition. And a lot of young people would like to be enrolled in this institute, and we hope that we'll have the free of charge tuition.
Frankly speaking, I'm not acquainted with this problem in detail. I understand that the Mining Institute in St. Petersburg, thanks to the efforts of the rector, is one of the exemplary higher educational establishments in Russia. You know that I think that it's the bestly equipped, and the level of teaching at this institute is at a very high world level. As I see it, it is one of the leaders in education in the world and in Europe. Of course, it's a pity that the problem, the financial problems, do not allow now to expand or to even to preserve the work of this institution, including in, I don't know what is connected with it, but I will prepare to speak to the rector. I think I will also speak to the governor. I promise you that this question will be discussed. I shall discuss this question. I'll raise this question before them. I do not guarantee you that it will be resolved, but this depends on the rector and the governor. This is their responsibility. But we will, by all means, raise this question before them. And when I say that, I mean the government. This will be a subject of discussion. We'll see what solution will come. I do hope that this solution will satisfy you.
Well, thank you, Vorkuta, and thanks all the residents of the Vorkuta region.
I will now call on Semenikhina and Natasha. Have SMS and other questions? What do you have to tell us?
Well, over half of the questions that we receive are received via mobile phones, and you can make a free of charge call. You can text us, and we've been receiving questions for over two hours, and we've received over 40,000 messages. One question from the foreign student in here, who is very concerned about the nationalistic problems, and how can we preserve trust to the foreign students?
This question concerns myself, not only myself. This, without exaggeration, it concerns the entire Russian society. Unfortunately, is part of the present-day world, and we are observing a growth of such tendencies practically in all countries. This is a common illness. There is only one medicine that the society should not accept such phenomena. We shall intensify the role of law enforcement agencies, and we shall do everything possible so that skinheads and fascist-like elements should disappear from the political map, so to speak, of our country. We shall do everything in this direction. But for those excesses that do take place, and have taken place, I can only offer my apologies.
Well, if you, there is another question from Dagestan, from Ali, a 19-year-old Ali, and he is wondering why there are so many unemployed in the region, but there are so many wealth upscale mansions.
And indeed, not only in Dagestan, but in other republics on the south of Russia are inflicted with such disease, unemployment, I mean. Dagestan most of all in Chechnya, then Dagestan, Ingushetia. This is a huge problem indeed. Indeed, is a great problem. For one vacancy, there are hundreds of young people vying to fill this vacancy. That is, in order to develop their own economic basis, that is, a tax basis, the development of production facility. This is task number one in the south of Russia. And only quite recently, a few days ago, I discussed this issue with the leaders of the southern regions of Russia. We have certain plans. Understand that you can't do this overnight, especially in conditions of destabilized situations in these areas. In conditions, the problems of security have not been satisfied. Nevertheless, we'll be doing this in a comprehensive way. What concerns these mansions? This is a manifestation of another problem. This indicates that the money that is being allocated by the federal center enters the regions through other channels, and they are being spent not always effectively or efficiently, and they are not being used exclusively for the interests of the entire society, the republic, or the subjects of Russia. True, this is a question that must be taken up by the law enforcement agencies. But we shall proceed from the fact that there are people, including in the south of Russia, in Dagestan, people who are legally making revenues and have the right to buy comfortable housing accommodations and mansions. The most important thing that this be done within the framework of law. I think we make a slight recess and we will maybe.
Well, we have a connection with the Chechen Republic and the city of Grozny. Well, our correspondent Vadim Kosilov is working in Grozny. Please, your question.
Hello, Grozny is on the air. We welcome you, not in order to waste time. We shall now tackle the questions. Well, here's a question. Please come up to the microphone, please. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Jack. When is the kidnapping in Chechnya is going to be stopped? My son was kidnapped several years ago, and there are so many thousands of women like me who lost their children. And who is responsible for that?
This is one of the most serious questions that comes at all kinds of levels, and specifically in recent years. We understand what this is connected with. That is because it is impossible ensure security for people at all levels. I hope that you agree with me. At times, it's almost impossible who is behind all these crimes. Either they are bandits in disguise or these actions by law enforcement agents. In any case, we shall continue all our investigations to find the missing people and to track down those who are responsible. We have instituted scores of court action against such people, and this involves people of local law enforcement agencies. The main thing is to find a political settlement in Chechnya involving the greatest number of people in the process of finding such settlement. We have set up a local law enforcement agency in the Republic, which are practically serving by the Chechen people themselves. That's number one. And the second point, I attach considerable attention to the parliament elections, which are to be held in November of this year. I think that there should be people in the parliament with diverse political views, so that all disputable issues should be resolved openly in a civilized manner in a political process rather than by the use of force. Herein, I hope to see your support, but the support also of all the people in your republic.
Grozny, we expect another question from you.
Let's go over to this area. Jamayev, Ivan Germanovich, people's artist. Good day. Okay. Mr. President, having visited our republic, you compared Grozny to destructed Stalingrad of the Second World War. Since then, quite a number of years, and the reconstruction work is going very, very slowly, and it's very complicated. I lost my living quarters in 2000. I've encountered a lot of red tape and a lot of humiliation. For my family have been renting in other people's apartments. There are thousands of people like myself. When is it possible to receive compensation? When will this compensation be issued to us? Thank you. You know that, first of all, you to say that compensation, the money is for that compensation does exist, has been planned for in the federal budget. That is to say, how this compensation has been distributed, this already depends on the local authorities of the Republic. But I must tell you that this, of course, is an unusual phenomenon. Nonetheless, the initial figure that was put forward by the local authorities of the Republic has been constantly growing. Unfortunately, the federal bodies and the local authorities in Chechnya cannot establish the ultimate figure. How many people have the right to receive such compensation. But I can tell you this for sure. I can tell you this for sure, and I promise this to you. All the necessary funds will be allocated. I will repeat this once again. I'll speak to the President of the Republic once again and the corresponding structures in Moscow, and I'll give additional instructions so that the funds will be allocated and so that the procedure of distributing these compensation will be restored. What concerns rebuilding Grozny itself, this is a problem that requires a comprehensive approach to ensure security of the city so that what is built today will not be destroyed tomorrow, and to organize this work on the spot. As you know, unfortunately, for a long period of time, it was impossible to resolve the question of to transfer the direction, the organizing committee, to move it from Moscow to Grozny. So, to put it mildly, to resolve this question so that the authorities in Chechnya will organize this work on the spot. I do hope that this will also improve the situation. The necessary funds will be allocated.
Maxim, another questions from Grozny residents.
Let's go over to this side, to some younger people. They probably have some questions.
Hello, Vladimir Vladimirovich. I'm a student on the 4th years at the university. As you know, in our republic, the unemployment in our republic is very high, and most of our population is unemployed. Most of the institutes and universities, many people graduate from institutes and universities in Grozny, but over 170 students who graduated last year, only 7 people could find job, and it's very hard to find hard for the Chechen people to find job in here. What are the federal bodies do to reduce unemployment in our region, and what is done to change the attitude to the Chechen people?
I've already spoken about this. The highest unemployment level in Russia, unfortunately, is in Chechnya. I don't think that this requires an explanation in view of the difficult events that occurred there in the plants 15 years ago. There are more than 500 people vying for one vacancy. There's only one way to change the situation, is to expand the economic possibilities of the Chechen Republic itself, to build new enterprises and production facilities there. I must say the process has been started. It's off the ground. I don't want to make a mistake in figures. The number of people working in Chechnya is constantly growing. We must agriculture, the oil and gas complex, the development of traditional branches of economy, brick factories, stone quarries, and so on. There are also those enterprises connected with high-tech. People like you have received a good education, have the right to apply your knowledge and education in your home republic. What concerns the image of Chechens in the country as a whole, then we do understand that this is connected with those grave events that occurred there, but I consider that this is a distorted image under the influence of the recent events. Why is it distorted? Because few people know about the heroic people in Chechnya who sacrificed their lives to save the lives of their own people and all the peoples of Russia and the interests of Russia as a whole. There are many such examples. Unfortunately, very little has been said about this. I do hope that we will become acquainted with the life and the heroic deeds of these people, and in greater detail and in a broader sense. I'm counting that this will change the image of the people of Chechnya throughout the entire Russian Federation. Of course, certain measures and steps must be taken on the part of the state mass media.
Maxim, thank you very much. Thank you for the Grozny residents who took part in our live and phone-in show. And we still continue to receive questions questions over the. We're receiving email questions, and you can check our website www.
Вопросов мы точно скажем вам цифру в течение нашего эфира. Сейчас на экранах вы увидите рейтинг наиболее популярных вопросов, которые приходили через интернет. И, Сергей?
У меня есть вопрос, который, как мне кажется, вдвойне актуальнее. Он мне не очень нравится тем, что он не подписан, но, как бы, сути дела, это не меняет. Вот примерно на днях был год с вашего памятного выступления 13 сентября, когда вы предложили новый порядок избрания губернаторов в парламентах местных по вашему представлению. И в свою очередь человек, который прислал нам вопрос, вспоминает о том, как на прямых линиях, таких как сегодня, дважды ставился вопрос о бедственном положении города Усть-Кут. И вот в этом году вы предложили кандидатуру Александра Тишанина вместо Бориса
raised several times. You proposed Alexander Tishanin instead of Boris Govorin as governor of Irkutsk. Is this the result of the call-ins, the previous call-ins? Well, this is above all the result of my evaluation of the situation in that region, and also the result of the fact that Boris Alexandrovich Govorin worked 2 terms as a governor for a region such as Irkutsk region, Irkutsk Oblast. This is quite a lot, and he has a lot of experience of government work, of work in business, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find ways to apply his knowledge and his efforts in other areas. I wanted to have in that region a person who, on the one hand, knows the problems of the Irkutsk Oblast, but on the other hand, has a fresh view, an original view of how to solve the problems of the people who live there. And the candidate that I proposed is the kind of person, the kind of administrator who had worked in the region for almost 2 years, a year and a half, and he worked as CEO of the regional department of the Russian railways. He knows the economy, he knows the problems of the region, but he is also a person who is not in any way committed or has any commitments toward the local bureaucracy. I'll call things by their names. The local bureaucracy who should address problems a lot better than it does. Well, we'll talk about the governors, but what do we have now?
Now one of the most important centers of military industry. It's in Udmurtia, so we're going there right now. So Ijevsk is online, Maxim is online. Here we are.
Good afternoon, Katya and Sergey and Vladimir Vladimirovich. The capital of Udmurtia, Ijevsk, a city that has many glorious names, such as the legendary designer of rifles, Kalashnikov, the skier Galina Kulakova, and others. We have here the residents of Ijevsk. They will now talk to you. Introduce yourself, please. Andrei Alexandrovich Nikolaev. Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My question is, why is it that our defense industry is surviving mostly on orders from the West, whereas our army cannot buy, cannot afford sophisticated new weapons? I am a turner in the defense enterprise Kupol. We produce anti-aircraft equipment that is in great demand in the world, but we don't have orders from our own state. When will our state give attention to the problems of the defense industry? Well, as you may know, a few years ago, the army was not purchasing any weapons. I will talk a little more about what is happening in the army, because there are many questions of this kind, not only from people working in the defense industry, but also people in the army, the servicemen. I have many questions from the servicemen of this kind. And first of all, let me say that over the past few years, in terms of improving the financial situation of the defense industry, we have done a great deal, specifically to cancel the debts, to provide orders, to preserve jobs, and to develop high-tech production. international markets and the use of international markets is an advantage, and it's a possibility to give certain financial and technological support to the defense industries. There is a real struggle in international markets today, and if our people are able to make their way into those markets and to promote our interests there, that's a good thing. It's very good. Last year, the volume of sales there was about $5 billion, and I would say that the psychological barrier was cleared last year. The armed forces of Russia purchased more than that amount, spent more than that amount to buy weapons. For weapons acquisition, we are spending more today than the defense industry gets revenues in international markets. Of course, our weapons are deservedly respected in the world, and I'm referring here to aircraft and referring to anti-aircraft systems, the infantry fighting vehicles, the rifles, etc., small arms, the fleet, the equipment for ships. But I would say that our army is being re-equipped. A lot is happening there. Modern tanks are being purchased. Large amounts of modern tanks were bought recently. We are now testing new modernized missiles that will be used both as sea-launched and ground-launched weapons. We are beginning to purchase the new ballistic missiles, including the mobile complexes. We are continuing to develop precision weapons. You probably saw recently the testing of those weapons. I attended those tests of high-precision long-range missiles. We are developing and will be commissioning the new strategic missile complexes with high-precision missiles, as I've said. For the time being, no country has such missiles, and probably they will not have such missiles sooner than we do. They will be invulnerable. They will be hypersonic and will be able to change course and will be invulnerable to the ABM systems that are being developed in some of the other countries of our partners. Of course, we would like to do more, but we also have economic and social problems to attend to. Izhevsk, more questions, please.
Good afternoon. Vera Ovchinnikova, an accountant. I would ask a question about lodging, about the housing. The housing problem remains a problem. It's a luxury. If you're not under the young family program, then the only thing is the mortgage loan, and the interest rate is very high. So my question is, why the mortgages didn't become the massive, and the people with low incomes are not involved in it?
Well, the mortgage system has not become a massive trend yet because, first of all, the income of the people is not high enough. Secondly, the economy and high inflation. When inflation is high, banks cannot grant mortgages on easy terms. And thirdly, we don't have enough experience in this area. These questions should be addressed, and given that the economic possibilities are now greater than before for our government, one of the priority areas should be addressing the question of affordable housing, and you said quite correctly that the mortgage system is the more promising way of addressing this problem. But also socially affordable housing will also be built. For example, for veterans of World War II, the amount of money next year that will be allocated next year will be several times higher. For example, last year it was 200 million, but the budget of the Russian Federation will be allocating 3 billion next year. Please, veteran organizations, take care of this and pay attention to this. Now, again, about the mortgage system, we'll be addressing a number of issues. First of all, we will add money to the charter capital of the mortgage system agency, mortgage loan agency. And for the first time, about 15 billion rubles, I think 14.8 billion rubles, will be allocated for government guarantees, for state guarantees of those loans. The government experts believe that this will result in longer mortgages, longer-term mortgages, not 7 to 8 years as now, but 20, 25, 30 years term mortgages. And then the mortgage loans will be cheaper, substantially cheaper as a result. This year, only about 40,000 mortgage loans are being arranged. By the year 2008 to 10, the number of mortgages granted annually, issued annually, will be no less than 1 million a year. As part of the program of helping the rural areas and young families, we will be subsidizing the interest, loan interest, and we will be allocating government money to make it possible for people either to get that money and add, to leverage that money and add a little more and buy apartments, or use those government subsidies as the first installment in paying for mortgage loans. We will be doing this in various regions of the Russian Federation on this or that scale. In some regions, people will be able to get up to 50% subsidy from the state and 50% as loan or as their own money. And in some other areas, particularly in the rural areas and in the depressed regions of Russia, there will be 100% subsidy that will allow a person to move into that housing on a renting basis, and later he would be able to buy out that. That will be in the depressed regions, in the rural areas, and for young families.
Thank you very much, Izhevsk. We'll continue. Our line, several seconds ago, I was told that for now we do have 38,000 questions via internet, and now we're going back to call center.
Yes, a little later, the internet. Natalia, do we have smiles on the internet?
So, we are up to full capacity, 250 people are online every other second. We do have about 65,000 questions, and as a total, it's 910,000 through the whole day. So one of the questions is online, so will you please give me the headphones to listen to the call? Thank you. Yes, hello. Please, your name and your question.
Igor Guskov, I'm 36 and I live in Ulyanovsk. Vladimir, my question is about the third presidential term. I know that you've been asked this question many times, and I know what you replied. But I'm asking because over the past decades, you are the only leader under whom the country has been developing in a stable way. After 2008, we would like to have continued confidence in our future, to live in a stable society and to have an intelligent and strong president. I'm not flattering you. This is a reality. Maybe we should have a referendum on the third presidential term. What do you think? Thank you. Well, my task, as I see it, is not to spend all my life in the Kremlin and to be always shown on Channel 1, Channel 2, and Channel 3, the same face, and then at the end, the FSB director would say, go back to Channel 1. I see my task as creating conditions for the country to develop over the long term so that young, intelligent, and effective managers lead our country. And therefore, no dramatic changes in our laws or particularly in the constitution of the Russian Federation, will be made. As for me personally, as military people say, I will find my place in the lines.
Now about SMS statistics, it's about more than 14,000 messages. But going back to the telephone calls, we do have one from the Rostov region. Hello? Hello, please give your name. Svetlana. Mr. President, will you please say to us, why do we in Russia can make a norm of 2-3 child per family? Those people who are in charge of child support benefits do not think that it's enough. In Finland, for example, it's more than 200 euros per family. How would you comment on this situation, please?
The population problem in our country began to emerge as a negative problem in the late 1960s, and we have had a continued negative trend over the past decades. And in this regard, Russia is not that different from other European countries, despite the fact that in many European countries and in North America, a lot of money is being allocated to support population growth. We don't see much success even in those countries. This is a complex problem, a multifaceted problem, and of course, this is a problem that should be addressed. But that does not mean that the government should not give special attention to that problem, and specifically, the government definitely should give more support in those areas that you mentioned. We certainly should address the issue of benefits, childcare benefits, but that is not enough. We should also think about how we support the kind of social and economic stability in the country that we need, because this is a basic condition. People should be able to think over the longer term, with a longer horizon for themselves and their families. The income of the people should grow. As for your specific question, there are several initiatives now being considered in the State Duma. One of the initiatives is to increase the lump sum payment when a child is born from 6,000 to 8,000. The second initiative is to increase the payments for children until 18 months old, to increase them from 500 to 700 rubles a month. And I will certainly support those initiatives, but they too are not enough. I believe that we should help women who want to have children. We should create conditions to make sure that they do not have to pay for childbearing, for giving birth to children. There are several initiatives, specifically childbearing certificates, so that a woman could produce those certificates in a particular clinic, and so that high-quality medical care is supported in that way. So we'll work in a number of areas here. Any more questions? Any more calls?
Yes, we have a call from Severodvinsk. Hello.
Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Alexander Petrovich Kutilov from Severodvinsk in the Arkhangelsk Oblast. The liability insurance for car owners is expensive, and the system doesn't really work, so it is not really a service, it's a tax, as I see it. Thank you. I agree with you. The quality of legislation, and specifically of this law, is not particularly high, and it can be improved. On the other hand, you know what's happening in our roads, how many people die, how many accidents occur in our roads, and the amounts paid for liability insurance are quite high. I don't know. The insurance companies, I think, can only keep up to 25%, and all the rest they have to pay as insurance coverage. So this is a question that the government and the State Duma are addressing, and I think it's quite possible to take decisions to improve the functioning of this system, of this law, based on the experience and on the practice that we have had over the past months, and certainly taking into account the real income of the people and specific groups of sections of the people. Thank you very much. Thank you, call center. Thank you, Natalia. Now we will have a direct line to Riga, Latvia. Rather uncommon.
Олег Грознецкий присоединяется к нам вместе с гостями своей телевизионной студии.
Please, Oleg, first of all, let me tell you why we are not in the streets of Riga, but why we are speaking from the roof of the House of Russia. The Riga State Duma first agreed to having our broadcasting station in the streets of Riga, and then this decision was cancelled because they said there can be no security assured. Now we are here in the Russian Cultural Center in Latvia. Please introduce yourself.
Svetlana, my name is. Good afternoon, Mr. President. I do have a question about Russian schools. Probably you know that Russian language is being forced out from the schools of Latvia. And the Russian schools do have a lack of teachers and manuals in Russian. We know that Russia has an opportunity to help us. And we would like to know whether we do have hope for the future assistance.
First of all, I would like to convey to say that I'm sorry that you have to speak from the roofs. It's a shame that the Latvian authorities, Riga authorities, under the pretext of security, refused the possibility for you to speak from the streets or from one of the squares of Riga. I think that such events should draw closer together the people of Latvia, all people who live in Latvia, regardless of their ethnic origin or language. All that we're doing, including this call-in show, despite the fact that you have to speak from the roof, should help to draw people closer together. This is our common problem. Let us, of course, not resent this, but rather let's emphasize that we all come from the same past, and we still probably carry some stains from that past, particularly the authorities of some of the republics of the former Soviet Union carry those stains, and this impulse to prohibit everything and not to allow this or that, it's not a good thing. It's better to work with the people and to try and prove to the people that you're right. This is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I'll be trying to do in replying to your question. The problem with the Russian schools and with the Russian language is a problem not only in Latvia and in the Baltic states. I would not want to demonize the position of the Latvian authorities here. Recently, I attended the UN summit in New York, and I spoke to the president, to your president, Pika Freiberger. We had a very good conversation. She understands many problems, including problems of the Russian speakers. And I very much hope that both at the level of the national government in Latvia and at the regional level, there will be a positive reaction and that they will be helping to create proper conditions for people regardless of their ethnic origin or language. that they will be helping all of those who see Latvia as their country. As for the support of the Russian language in the former republics of the Soviet Union, we are trying to help using various channels, the public channels, the state channels and others, and of course the Ministry of Education and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs allocate funds specifically for buying teaching aids and textbooks. We will continue also to invite teachers from Russian language schools and Russian language teachers to seminars and conferences in Moscow. We will do our best to make sure that our specialists are able to visit Latvia and other countries, and that they help in improving Russian language education in Latvia. We very much hope that this will be properly understood by the people of Latvia and by the Latvian authorities. We hope for an understanding of the fact that Russia does not want to divide Latvian society or the societies of other Baltic states. What we want is to see a united society, a monolithic society there, but a society in which all people, regardless of their original language, are fully fledged citizens of that country which they see as their home. And Russia will be helping to address all those issues that you may have. But again, let me say that we will try to do it in a non-confrontational manner to make sure that we don't create new problems, but rather that we create conditions for you to live properly in those countries, for you to feel as fully fledged citizens in the country that you regard as your home. Oleg, another question from Riga. Yes, please. Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Oleg Viktorovich Kalmykov. I am a citizen of Russia. Please tell us, why is it that our requests for pensions are considered in the pension fund for up to 1 year? Well, the fact is that there is an agreement of the CIS countries. A decision has been taken at the government level of CIS countries that the pensioners who live in one of CIS countries but are citizens of another CIS country are getting pension payments as citizens of the country in which they live. I am not sure whether this procedure applies to Baltic countries. If you think that the bureaucratic situation, that the bureaucratic red tape is too much for you in accordance with the existing legislation, I will definitely speak to our government agencies about this problem today. Well, let us continue this conversation with the people who are on the roof in Riga. We had a Russian citizen, but there is another category of people here, a category of non-citizens. Are there non-citizens of Latvia here? Yes, my name is Eduard Goncharov. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you said on many occasions that we here are not even foreigners, we are non-citizens, but we are your countrymen, we are your compatriots. How can you help us specifically? I have said in replying to the first question that this is a situation that cannot be regarded as normal, and an objective observer, an analyst, a political leader, including in Latvia, any person who regards himself or herself as committed to human rights has to agree that the current situation is not right. There is a legal system in the world, a certain conceptual system in the world, whereby a person is linked to a territory where he or she lives, either as a citizen or as a foreigner or as an apatride without citizenship, a person without citizenship, or a person with dual citizenship. Non-citizen, sometimes they even say an alien in those documents, and that's shameful. This is something that, unfortunately, our colleagues in some Baltic states invent prevented. And this is totally inconsistent with the legal system as it exists internationally and particularly in the European Union. We very much hope that the realistic people in the Baltic countries will understand this and become aware of the unsustainability of the system that they have and will change that system. We will use diplomatic channels, we will use our bilateral channels and our dialogue with the European Union to address this question and to make sure that the problem is solved. It's important to make sure that those who make decisions at the national level really understand how important this is to themselves, to their own country, to solve this problem. So we'll work in that direction. Thank you, Riga, Latvia. Now let's go back to Russia. Katya, what do we have now?
So we have the Belgorod region and Golovchina settlement over there. So it's on the border of Russia and Ukraine, and Ilya Kanavin is there. Ilya, you're online, and all the residents.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Russia. Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich, Katerina, and Sergei. Yes, this village is on the border, and one of the villages here actually has a sign saying this is where Russia begins, and that's quite typical. What is less typical is that Golovchina is not a typical Russian village. It's very comfortable, it's very well kept, and there are many young people there. That again is not typical in the Russian villages. There are 7,000 residents in this village, and I have to tell you that the feeling of things going well here was a very pleasant discovery for us and rather surprising. But there are problems here, of course. So what are your questions to the head of state? Yes, please. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. I'm Lyudmila Alexandrovna Mayrachovskaya. We do live with my husband on the Ukrainian border. Our daughter lives in Kharkiv, which is Ukraine. It's not very comfortable to go there by train because it leaves only one time a day. And because of the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, it takes a lot to travel there by car. Instead of 60 kilometers, we have to drive 120 because we need to cross the central border and to pay the entrance fee, and the car insurance is very expensive, and the conditions of crossing the border are getting more strict, and we don't get more than one sack of potatoes with us, and almost every weekend listening to the car, we were ready to greet them, and our grandchildren were eager to see us. But now we're afraid that we won't have such an opportunity. And what makes it even worse, if something bad happens, or probably a funeral, how do we get to our relatives then? So please do give your comments whether any procedure is going to be simplified, even for the residents of the border zone. Thank you.
I understand your question and your pain, your concern, and I fully share your feelings. This is absolutely impermissible when two ethnic close peoples, in the direct sense, in the pure sense of the word, in the spiritual sense as well, have been separated. This crevice seems to be expanding in all the confusion that you just mentioned. But at the same time, I would like to assure you both the leadership of Russia and, what is important, the leadership of Ukraine. This I can confirm in view of our personal meetings with the president of Ukraine, Mr. Yushchenko. We have come to an agreement that we will be working together in order to simplify the procedure of crossing the Russian-Ukrainian border. More than that, the stand of the president of Ukraine is quite consecutive and stern. I'm shameful. He himself raised these questions, which at the bureaucratic level on both sides has so far has not been resolved properly. This concerns both the auto insurance. I promise you we shall return to this question. We shall strive to simplify as far as possible for citizens and in general, on the whole, the crossing of borders between Russia and Ukraine, and also other former republics of the Soviet Union, and where we encounter such counteraction. This concerns, first of all, the people living in the border regions. We have taken decisions that the Ukrainian citizens that are in Russian Federation or crossing the border of the Russian Federation can stay in Russia for a period of up to 30 days without registration. We shall also continue our efforts to resolve these problems. I promise this you for sure. To what extent we will be effective, it depends on both sides. But we, on our part, on the part of Russia, are fully determined to resolve this issue.
Well, the topic of the punishment and criminal punishment is very vital.
Please don't.
Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Gorbachev Elena Vladimirovna. I'm a teacher. These questions have been already asked, but for teachers in the villages is very important. We've just constructed, we've just built our house. We've received a plot of land. We've received some benefits to receive housing loans, but. And if, as any other family that has 3 children and more, we received 1,000 rubles, but despite all the support from the government, and building your own house is very expensive and it takes a lot of time, can we rely on the government, on the country, to provide us a house to be purchased if you take loans, housing loans, and within 10 years we will already living in our own house, and our children and we will have a plot of land, and you probably have a plot of land, and you know how happy we are to have it.
The housing problem is one of the most acute ones through the entire history of the Soviet Union problem. As far as we can remember us, we have always been talking about the housing program and the necessity to resolve. In any case, as far as I remember myself, we have been talking about this issue all the time. I can always also repeat what I've already said. What concerned the rural youth, the program concerning rural youth, it will be continued to carried out. It will be implemented, not only in the former framework. Its framework will be expanded. I will repeat once again now. For the rural youth and for other regions, the possibility of acquiring housing by 100% through to credits from the state, but with a subsequent possibility of buying out this housing for themselves. For the self-sufficient regions, 50% will be covered by subsidies or by mortgage plan for quite a long period of time and on easy terms credit. This is what we intend to do, and we hope it will be implemented, that this will be noticeable for the people living in rural areas.
Ilya, you have another opportunity to ask the question.
Thank you very much. Who is asking the next question?
Can I ask the question, please?
Galerin Yuri Alexandrovich, I'm a farmer. Hello, Vladimir Vladimirovich. I have the following question to ask. I've been in this business for 10 years now. That's why I want to ask you the following. The products, the agricultural products, there's no demand for agricultural products that we grow. I have 3,000 hectares of fields. The harvest that I've taken in is in granaries. There's no demand for my produce. I cannot sell my farm produce. I have the following question. Will the state pay attention to this problem? I'll try to. I've understood the question. Thank you. I understood your question quite adequately. And this problem is well known to all. First of all, I must tell you, the practice of providing easy term credits for farmers and for those people who are working on their own plot of land, this practice shall be continued in the future. We have envisaged the allocation of additional funds so that farmers and people having their own plots of land would be able to use the entire system which is being developed for large-scale farmers. This means the following. You will be able to continue receiving easy term credits with subsidies for large farmers. 2/3 of the rate will be used, but for individual farmers and private farmers, these subsidies may be as high as 95%. That means that this grant almost entirely. What concerns the selling of your products, we will continue to upgrade the practice of state intervention. I mean, the state will. We talk to the Ministry of Agriculture and other agencies. This so-called intervention on the part of the state should be undertaken not after the harvest. This should be done prior to the harvest season. And the approximate figures at which the state will be buying up the produce that you grow. That is to stabilize the prices at which it will be sold. And the third issue, the necessary funds will be allocated for creating the infrastructure for other economies in the rural areas, to lessen the dependency on the middlemen who buy up your farm produce, and so that the buying up, I would like to repeat this once again, in order to lessen the dependency on indecent middlemen. We have just worked out these measures, and I hope that they will be implemented in the economic life of next year.
Thank you very much, and we will thank you for all the residents from Belgorod region that they took part in the conversation with Mr. President.
We now go over to the call-in center. I have such a feeling there's one call after another, more and more call-ins. Natalia Semenikhina.
We are approaching the 1 million question, and we have received 500,000 SMS messages, and 8,000 recording machines are working, and all the questions are in the database. And here is the next questions. Please introduce yourself. Unfortunately, we didn't receive this call, and of course we have another one. This is from Sverdlovsk regions. It's on the other line. Please introduce yourself. We are listening.
Simonov, Gennady Semyonovich. Go ahead. Good day, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Good day. About a year concerning the question of monetization of privileges. The passions are sort of dying down now concerning providing people entitled to privileges to provide them with medicine, both in my town. I know that this problem exists in other territories of Russia. Sometimes this does not depend on conditions that the local authorities can handle. The government of Russia, the health ministry have worked out such measures and patterns of providing pensioners with medical medicine. What can you say about that? I agree with you that not only in the respect that the law of monetization, and this has triggered justified emotions, because certain measures should have been taken, adequate measures, long ago. Nonetheless, unfortunately, as is often the case, these questions are being resolved not in the way they should be. I'll not be using strong words. I don't have the right, all the more so on air. But I think you understand what I have in mind. At the same time, I would like to draw your attention to certain circumstances which have nudged, so to speak, the government to take such measures. Let's speak about transportation. For example, such a large city as St. Petersburg, with almost a 5 million population. How many people had enjoyed free transportation? 2,500,000, more than half the population of the city was able to travel. But there are people that did not travel anywhere because of their health, because of age, or because of their young age. Then who then paid for all the workers of industrial enterprise, doctors, teachers, that is people who have very modest incomes. But since very few people paid for this, the tariffs of this for such services increased, and the governor told me 2 more years of such work, the public transportation will come to a grinding halt. There will be private transportation, but this is even worse. That is to say, it was necessary to resolve these pressing problems. That's quite true, but of course they had to be resolved more adequately. They should have been in a way what would happen in the regions, in the provinces. In certain areas, these benefits and privileges were annulled, especially concerning students. These questions were not pertaining to Law 120. Let's take, there were people who had the right to receive free sanitary accommodations and treatment. We had millions, tens of millions. For about 30 million people were entitled. Actually, this number exists. In 2003, for example, this service, this privilege was used by a little more than 200,000 people only, and were in 30 million. This was, of course, profanity. Now, only of the 8 months of this year, of 1 million people, and this is, of course, is a little, but this increased considerably. What concerns the provision of people with medicine and drugs, there are very many errors and many problems existing in this area. But nonetheless, the nomenclature of the names of these medicine have been, the list of medicines to be offered has increased to 2,000 names. Previously, certain people could only read about such medicines, but today people have the possibility of receiving such medicine. Probably the system of distributing these medicines is not completely functioning properly. That the federal authorities and regions must see what actually is taking place in actual life, but not on paper. And the signals and impulses will be formulated by myself to those agencies. We're coming to the second half of our call-in show. We have excluded certain cities.
So we have on direct line with Engels city, which is in the Saratov region. The elite division of the Air Force, Sergei Semyonov is a correspondent.
Hello, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Hello, Katya, Sergei. The aviation division in Engels is the largest air base in the Russia of 160. The pilots themselves jokingly say this air base, the arm of Moscow. The air base here is working on in a pattern of constant battle readiness, and they are ready to take to the air at any moment. We have officers who are not on patrol duty, their wives and children here. Of course, they have the officers have questions to the Commander-in-Chief of Russia. Let's go over to the question. Who would like to be the first? Introduce yourself, please. Deputy Colonel Svaidulin, Commander-in-Chief, you have always recently been in the Navy and Air Force. Quite recently, you flew in a supersonic strategic bomber. This means that the Air Force and the Army whole is becoming a priority for the state. The situation now is that many young officers, young lieutenants, upon graduating for higher education and having served for 5 years, according to contract, are resigning and going to civil life. What measures the state envisage in order to raise the prestige of military service? Thank you. You said lately been visiting the armed forces. I think during more than 5 years as president of Russia, quite regularly visit army units, beginning from the first year of my presidency, and I intend to do so in the future. I have in mind that there is not quite so simply business-like tourism. It is specific work to check the combat readiness of the armed forces and to resolve social problems facing the service. What concerns the Air Force, then, of course, it was certainly no coincidence that took part in those exercises with your colleagues. This was connected also with the tragedy that occurred with you quite recently. We know that an aircraft crashed and the crew perished. I think that my participation in these exercises should be connected with the question of mobilizing the organizational, administrative, and, if need be, the financial resources in order to close this chapter, so that all those responsible must ensure security for our strategic effort should pay special attention to this problem. What concerns the Air Force as a whole, and incidentally I must say that I've already said this and I'll repeat it once again, I was quite satisfied with the way the pilots acted and how they worked and functioned. And indeed, our strategic Air Force is at the adequate level. True, there are many problems. I met some of your colleagues separately, not in the groups, but I spoke individually with some of them. Not many, but partly I spoke to them eye to eye, about 5 or 6 minutes each. And on the whole, the people were quite frank. It was very useful experience for myself, I must say, in order to immerse myself not in the problems of long-range Air Force, but in what concerns the armed forces and the Air Force as a whole. Of course, in the view, God forbid, the conflicts that may come in the future, conflicts that exist in the world, the Air Force plays a special role in all these instances. Unfortunately, I must say that so far we did not give the attention that was required. And those letters that I received from Air Force pilots in even in preparations for today's call-in show. But the plan for developing the Air Force do exist, and the plans for building new aircraft concerning the fifth generation, I have in mind the fighter planes and providing them with the most up-to-date equipment. I know about the question about the gas and lubricants. I remember what many of you who are present there in front of me today spoke about trainers and other types of equipment, simulators, and for training young pilots. I have given the proper orders to the Defense Ministry and the proper agencies, and we will continue to act actively and energetically in this direction. What concerns service in the armed forces, we must, of course, solve a wide range of questions concerning material encouragement to create a certain image of the servicemen in the media, in the minds of children, as defenders of the homeland and each family in Russia, in society as a whole, and each Russian citizen. There are many other components concerning the bringing up. There is no single magic pill that could resolve all this from. This provides we shall continue working all these questions.
Sergey, another questions.
Your questions, please. Please introduce.
Eleonora Likhacheva, my wife of Commander Likhachev, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Many military officers receive housing certificates, but the cost of this certificate is lower than we cannot afford to buy a new flat for the money we receive. Is the government gonna compensate for the housing?
Those young officers who are now serving in the armed forces, they are coming into a new system of a mortgage system on quite easy term conditions, which so far do not exist in other sectors of the economy, either in civilian life or in the ministries or agencies that are equated to the Defense Ministry, or servicemen that are equated to those people serving in the Defense Ministry. These privileges will be given only to the servicemen of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Those servicemen that are not in this category must be provided for by the legislation of the Russian Federation that exists today, simply because they cannot save up enough money for mortgages, but the sum of money that is being allocated for this problem have been considerably upgraded in 2006 as the program for certificate for housing will be preserved.
Thank you, and we thank the Air Force Base and this division. We had town of Engels on a line, and we have more questions from internet.
So, a question from internet, Sergey. I'll begin with a question about the concerning citizenship. But the specific questions, question of Kazakhstan. I'm going to Kazakhstan and to get to Russian Federation citizenship. As far as it exists, will to January the 1st, 2006. You said that you are interested in Russia receiving legal migrants. This is the main problem. All the best. This is what was written in the internet. But the key phrase here, the immigrants need a lot of documents to get Russian citizen. This is a strategic choice by Russia to attract people for permanent residence, those people to the Russian Federation who choose Russian Federation as their native land. We will be doing this persistently and accurately so as not to create any problems for the indigenous population and those people who are living in their native places. The government must find such measures of attracting migrants so as not to create problems for the indigenous population living in that area. That's first. Now, the second, I agree with you that what requires additional measures to simplify the solution of these questions. The easy term procedures for people of the CIS will be preserved after 2006. The necessary instructions have been given by the President's administration and the government of the Russian Federation. This procedure will be extended in the future. But besides that, we plan to undertake several other steps in order to improve the situation in this sphere. Precisely this. There will be a simplified procedure will be introduced to receive a work permit, and also the procedure will be simplified for long-term residents in the territory of the Russian Federation without receiving Russian citizenship. This entire complex of measures will help us to resolve this problem. But I'll tell you the following thing. I think that this is insufficient in order to achieve our goal. That is why I intend to formulate instructions to the government of the Russian Federation so that the government should set up a separate and additional program for bringing our countrymen back to the Russian Federation. That is one of the questions that I received during the course while we're preparing for our today's call-in show. There's certain sort of offense. I forget who asked this question, but if that person is listening to us right now and will identify himself, that the author of that question, in this work on live in 2003, that all those people who want to leave the CIS and return to Russia have already done this. This is, I bring my apologies to you for this. If I said that, I do not remember as I formulated that question, then I was incorrect. Indeed, there are many people who would like to leave their CIS countries, and this program that actually does exist of bringing back our countrymen back to Russia will be developed further and adopted by our government.
Another question that we received via internet. Can you characterize in few words your priorities? And
приоритет у нас один. И самый главный из них, это улучшение качества жизни.
The quality of the life of the citizens of the Russian Federation, and how to achieve this goal, and how to resolve this problem. There are many ways of reaching this, and the main prerequisite is to provide high rates of growth of the Russian economy, and on the basis of this, to resolve all the social problems, and to provide the priority development of this or that branch of the economy. I've already told you that on the basis of this economic growth in the recent years, we're able to formulate the priorities of social problems, that healthcare, housing, education, and certain other support other branches of the economy, agricultural, high technology. All this taken together in a comprehensive way will be the priority of the next coming years. A question by internet. Let's now turn to have direct communications with Volgograd.
базе работает наш корреспондент Иван Родионов. Ему слово.
We have Ivan Rodionov in Volgograd, Ekaterina Sergey, Vladimir Vladimirovich, good afternoon. We are here at Mamayev Kurgan, Mamayev Hill. This is one of the dramatic and bitter symbols of the war and of our victory in the war. We have many people here, residents of Volgograd, who want to ask questions. I see many veterans here who would like to ask you a question. Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Boris Laronovich Gavrilov. I'm a veteran of the Great Patriotic War. I started fighting the Nazis on the 22nd of June, 1941, and I ended the war in Prague in May 1945. The celebration of the anniversary of victory was a really moving celebration and a national celebration this year, particularly this year. We felt pride for our country. We felt unity. We, I think, realized once again the price of that great victory. But then the celebration was over and life returned to the same thing. How do we make sure that we Russians are always proud of our country, of our unity, that we always feel that our great and free Russia is our hope? First of all, let me thank you for your question. Thank you for your praise for how we organized the celebration of the 60th anniversary of victory. We owe it above all to you, to the veterans of World War II. And without your great deeds, without your heroic deeds, there wouldn't have been that celebration. I would like to thank all people and the leaders of the various regions and municipalities of the Russian Federation for making this a truly national celebration. I would like to thank my colleagues and friends, the leaders of those countries who accepted our invitation and came to celebrate the 60th anniversary of victory in Moscow on Red Square together with us. Indeed, now the celebration is over, but the decisions that were taken at that time to give additional support to the veterans and invalids of World War II, and basically it's the same category, those decisions were taken and they are being implemented. You know, for example, that the pension of the invalids of the Great Patriotic War now is 8,900 plus rubles. For the participants of war, the pension is 8,700 rubles a month, and I think that perhaps that's not a huge amount of money, but it is money on which you can live. The celebration is over, but I believe that attention to veterans should continue, and I'm asking the regions and municipalities to continue to support veterans throughout the territory of the Russian Federation. As I have said, let me repeat, giving free housing to the veterans and invalids of the Great Patriotic War will be supported federally, and the amount of money will be increased several times over. If last year we allocated 200 million rubles for this, and next year, 2006, we will be allocating 3 billion rubles to the regions to address the housing problems of the invalids and participants in the Great Patriotic War. And this also concerns helping them in treatment, in buying medication, etc., to make sure that not only veterans but all of us can be proud of our country. We must be competitive in the world. We must achieve new results, better results in the economy and in addressing social problems. The contribution of veterans and of the veteran organizations here is tremendous. They are working hard to educate younger people, and they're doing that very positively. Thank you. Another question from Volgograd. Yes, let us give a chance to the younger generation too. Your question, please.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, good afternoon. I'm a mother of two children and a teacher in the university. Now I'm concerned with the medical healthcare system in Russia. People are denied to have free medical treatment in the hospitals, and the same is going on in pediatrics. We do need health people. Comment on it, please.
One of the really pressing issues in the social sphere over the past years is exactly as you said. You have correctly outlined the current situation, particularly the situation in healthcare at the primary level, and this is why I have proposed that the government should focus on the primary healthcare system as the priority in this area, and in particular, preventive care should be emphasized. Prevention of disease is a problem that can only be solved if we increase people's income, improve their lives, and if we provide additional equipment to primary healthcare hospitals, 10,000 of such hospitals. We gave this task to the municipalities in the past, but the municipalities didn't have the money, and the federal government was not helping them. So it is this sector of healthcare that should be emphasized. The nurses and doctors will be paid higher, 10,000 rubles more will be added to their monthly income, and we should also increase the number of operations that are made for free in the high-tech medical centers. This year, 60,000 such operations were done. Next year, twice as many, 120,000 next year, and then the next year, 180,000 such operations. But in order to make sure that we don't have too many people who require such care, we shall also support on a priority basis the primary health care. In particular, will focus on vaccination. Next year, the national calendar of vaccination should be financed in full, 100%, and infectious disease treatment, including AIDS, will be emphasized. We will also be building high-technology medical centers in a number of regions of the Russian Federation. In 2006 and 2007, at the first stage, there will be about 6 regions that will receive financial assistance for this purpose, and in 2008, another 9 regions of the Russian Federation. We, of course, should remember about the needs of other doctors who work in other hospitals and health centers, but in particular, we should remember that it is the primary healthcare sector where only 50% of the needed personnel work. This should be our priority. Thank you, Volgograd. There will be another southern city, and specifically Gelendzhik on the Black Sea.
So we do have Evgeny Rashkov in Gelendzhik, so please proceed with the questions to the President.
Good afternoon, Katya and Sergey, and good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Gelendzhik, a sea resort, is greeting you. We'll have questions, even though it's the end of September. We have summer, whereas it is autumn in the rest of the country. The water is beautiful, the nature is beautiful, as we can see. Questions, please. Introduce yourself. My name is Konstantin Papandapa. I am a doctor, and I have lived in Gelendzhik all my life. I can be very happy that over the past 5 or 6 years, Gelendzhik has become a European European-class resort. It used to be a backwater, but thanks to our leaders, the situation has improved. Last year, the State Council had a meeting here. Nevertheless, many Russians still go and spend their vacation in Turkey rather than here because of cheaper airfare and because the roads here are not very good. We hope that improving the road, building a new road from Krasnodar to Gelendzhik will help to solve many problems. This is the road of life for us, and hopefully the federal budget will be able to help. We very much hope that the road will be built. And my second question is that in your speech you said that doctors at the local level, their pay will be raised by 10,000 rubles a month. When will this start? This will start in 2006. In the beginning of 2006, we will not drag out this issue. The financial resources have been allocated, and I hope that when the budget is considered in the State Duma, no killer amendments will be introduced that will prevent this program from being implemented. I know that most members of the State Duma want this issue to be solved because they've been demanding this for a long time. But also it's very important to provide additional equipment to the primary health care centers and also preventive care, particularly among children. Vaccination and regular checkups of all people, particularly of children, should be our priority, and they are our priority. Another question from Gelendzhik. Yes, please. Okay, let's give a chance to... Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Vladimir Vladimirovich. My name is Polina. I'm a student of Cuban University in Kuban, and I do have the following questions. You asked about the reform of local government, and I am interested to know when do we see the results of this reform in our town of Gelendzhik? We're not only the small town, we're a resort, moreover.
What specifically is of concern to you? Could you formulate your question and your concerns better?
How would this reform influence on the development of our resort? What are the measures and the reform, how will it influence our resort?
First of all, I would like to congratulate all people in Krasnodar for having such wonderful and beautiful ladies, young ladies and students here. You look wonderful, really. Now, my answer about the reform of local self-government is that the purpose of this reform is to make sure that the local authorities do not have any commitments for which they don't have financial resources. Resources either from their own tax base or from the higher levels of government, regional or federal level. We don't want to continue a situation when people feel that they are entitled to certain benefits, whereas the government says we have no money to provide for those benefits, for those entitlements. So this is the purpose of the overall reform of local self-government. Specifically as regards the resort areas, your colleague, let's put it this way, who asked the previous question, spoke about the infrastructure. We will emphasize the improvement of infrastructure in the south of the Russian Federation, specifically airports, ports, roads, railways, including a road, circumventing road that connects Gelendzhik with Krasnodar, Krasnodar and Sochi, Gelendzhik and Sochi, the road from Moscow to Rostov, the development of the airport in Sochi, in Gelendzhik and Krasnodar as well. All of this taken together, plus the possibility of creating recreation zones with a special tax benefits. This tax privileges. This possibility has now been addressed, and the federal government and the municipalities should decide where those zones will be. Certainly in the Krasnodar region, where in Krasnodar region, this is something that will have to be decided in dialogue with the governor and with the municipalities. More questions, please. Okay, let's give a chance to this person in a bright shirt. Mr. President, good afternoon. My name is Alexei Rostogoyev. I am extremely happy to live in my wonderful city of Gelendzhik. You visited our city many times. What did you like? What do you remember about our place? First of all, the people here are very kind, forthcoming, and judging by the results that we see in the Krasnodar region and in Gelendzhik, you are very hard-working people and you know how to organize your work. I know that there are concerns here about the development of the oil and gas sector. Some people are concerned about this because they would like to see Gelendzhik as just a resort, a recreation center. But historically, it so happened that there was a refinery built here. It was not built by us, and it's been there for decades. Unfortunately, during the previous decades, very little attention was given to the environmental problems. With the state company, state-owned company operating there now, conditions have been created for additional investment there, and the purpose of that investment is not so much to expand production, but also to address the environmental issues. You know how much of the waste polluted the environment in the past. Now we should address this and make sure that this is ruled out, and we will continue to think about how to develop this resource so that the sea, the people, and the sun, so that this all works together, and also the development of the economy in those areas that are a priority for the south of Russia, for Gelendzhik, and this will make your city even more beautiful.
Thank you very much, Gelendzhik. We're sorry to say goodbye to you, to such a sunny city, but we are back to Moscow, to the call center. Probably it's the last time we get there. What news do you have? What statistics and what calls? We're hiding here, so we are more than 1 million calls today. More than 1,000 calls we received during being on air. Lots of students and school children are calling to us, and more than 60,000 SMS messages have we received them being on air. Thank you to all operators, and probably we do have one very vital answer to a question: what is the country today? But now we do have Nabережные Челны. It's another Russian town.
My name is Alexander Sergeyevich Tukmakov. I'm calling from Nabережные Челны. This is my question. Vladimir Vladimirovich, are you sure that all your instructions are being fulfilled? Would you think that there is a kind of sabotage on the part of bureaucratic officials at various levels of government? Well, let me answer one part of this question. I'm sure that there is no sabotage. Secondly, the answer to that part of your question is negative. I'm not sure that all my instructions are being fulfilled. There are many problems in the country. There are social issues and other issues that had not been addressed for years. The quality of the legal culture is not very high among people who are responsible for the functions of government at various levels, and so I do not have confidence that everything is being done to fulfill my instructions. But I do believe, I understand that I personally should give more attention to oversight and to making sure that all decisions are seen through to their result. Any more questions now? Yes, let us have another question.
Yes, hello, Mr. President. I'm calling from Sochi. I'm 46 years old, and I do have such a question. The average life is more than 60 years of pension time. So please, will you tell us why do you increase the age of retirement?
Well, this is indeed a question that we see more and more often in the information media. It is being discussed by experts, and this is the interest to this problem is because of the population problem. The number of people who work and the number of people who are retired, those numbers are changing. The number of retirees is increasing, and this could create problems for the pension fund and for other government agencies in this sphere. And there is another argument, well, let's not call it an argument, but another component in this discussion. Life expectancy in Russia is a lot lower than in Europe, where they have decided to raise the retirement age. So this is what I personally think. First of all, in this country, in our country, life expectancy is indeed lower, but it is lower not because of the people who have reached the retirement age. The language that is used among experts, the final age in our country is similar to the United States and in other countries, though it's a lot lower. But the overall life expectancy is lower in our country because too many people in our country die young and in middle age. This is because of drinking, hard drinking. This is because of drugs. This is because of industrial accidents. This is because of road accidents. This is because of poorly organized healthcare system. All in all, this creates a problem. But at the same time, let me tell you this. I am against raising the retirement age. While I am president, this decision will not be taken. I believe that there is no reason that we should raise the retirement age. We should stimulate, give incentives to people who believe that after their retirement, they can continue to work if they're healthy. So we should stimulate and give incentive to those who would like to continue working after retirement age, but at the same time, their pensions should remain in effect. So once again, let me tell you that I'm against raising the retirement age for men or women. Thank you, Natalia Semenikina. Thank you, the call center. We still have a lot of questions.
So when we were preparing this discussion, and so probably we can draw some first results, more than 1 million calls we received in the call center, more than 100,000 SMS messages and lots of questions via internet. We do have lots of interesting questions coming from young people. Of course, you cannot answer all of them, but probably you can tell us the figure of the questions you were.
Well, I did not count all the questions that I looked at last night. I spent several hours reading those questions. Of course, I was not able to read them all, even though I spent a lot of time long past midnight reading those questions. There are many repeating questions, and including those questions in which people said, I'm sure that they will not show this question to you. There was no selection. I was able to look at many questions, perhaps not all. So I selected a few questions, indeed, so maybe we should now consider those questions. These we did not go through a real selection procedure, so I just would like to read some repeating questions. Irina Cherepanova from Ivanovo Oblast, a widow who has 2 children underage and an adult daughter. During the monetization of benefits, we had a situation when the fares are no longer available for children. The pensioners, after monetization, did not get monetary benefits for transportation. They said that the budget of our oblast doesn't have the money for it. I am asking you because the governor doesn't have the money for children in the villages. Irina Cherepanova from the village of Volushina. First of all, let me say this. As regards fares for benefit recipients and pensioners, among benefit recipients, it should be quite clear what the situation should be. People should be able to choose. Either they want the money or they're able to buy tickets at reduced rates. With the difference not exceeding the monetary benefits. So we should make sure that the financial situation of the people doesn't get worse. For those pensioners who received benefits but were not benefit recipients formally, their pensions were raised by 240 rubles, and the regional leaders were supposed to provide reduced rate benefit tickets. If this was not done in the Ivanovo Oblast, then I believe that this is a shortcoming of the governor and of those who are responsible. As for canceling the benefits for students, if this happened at the initiative of local leaders, and I believe that they used the situation created by that law to do that, and that should be changed. Now, a question from Sweden about the possibility of using the stabilization fund for childcare benefits and for helping people with children. I have said that the State Duma is considering such initiatives and that they will be supported, so I will not repeat my reply. Now, Evgeny Ivanovich Narenko from the Primorsky region is asking about the United Russia Party. The authorities now do not have serious opposition. Do you think that this results in lack of control, lack of oversight, and that in a democratic state, a lack of opposition is a step backwards? We remember what happened when the CPSU, the Communist Party, was the leader of the country. Well, let me tell you that the Communist Party of the Soviet Union established its monopoly of power in the constitution of the USSR, where it was called the leading and the guiding force in the country, political force in the country, and there were no other political forces. In the Soviet Union, there was just one kind of legal opposition, and that was the Russian Orthodox Church. There was no other legal opposition in the USSR. As for United Russia, yes, indeed, it is a dominant political force, the dominant political force now in the country and in the State Duma, but that's a normal situation for all democratic countries. Those who win the elections, those who have the most votes, are in charge. It is difficult to agree with your point that there are no opponents, that there is no opposition. Yes, they have a majority, but there are opponents. There is the LDPR, led by Vladimir Zhirinovsky. There is the Rodina Party. Even after the split, that party criticizes the authorities, and the United Russia Party and the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, which is the systemic opposition, has been this opposition for many years. So there is no danger that we'll go back to a monopoly in politics. Alexander Lenizhchenko from Sverdlovsk region. I am invalid, I am deaf, and millions of people will never learn what you're saying now or what you will be saying on New Year's Eve. Please solve this problem because our constitutional rights are being violated. I fully agree with Alexander Olegovich. Yesterday, after reading this question, I spoke to the executives of the state television channel, and certainly in state television media, this will be addressed and this will be done. And in Ivanovo Vasilyevo from Tverskaya region, I have children and 4 grandchildren. When will the games machine be prohibited in our city? Everyone is playing, everyone is involved in gaming, including children. Well, this is indeed an issue, a question. I fully agree that this should be done. The regional leaders are saying that this should be prohibited. I have asked the government to look into it. The State Duma is looking into it. We are preparing decisions that will normalize this situation, I hope. Right now, it is unacceptable what we have because the people's rights are not protected. Nizhny Novgorod, ML Sporosheva. I thank the President for our new governor. Well, thank you for your gratitude. The new governor has not done anything good as yet, but he is a very experienced person, a reliable leader who proved his ability to work efficiently in Moscow, and I hope that he will show his stuff in Nizhny Novgorod as well. On the mortgage system, this is something that I've already discussed. Let us save time and not talk about it again. Is the President happy with the school reform? Because he received free education. If you are speaking about the unified testing system, this is, as of now, an experiment. Every step we're taking in that area are meant to create equal conditions for young people to enter colleges and universities regardless of where they live now. And as regards this part of the experiment, I think that it has been successful. It will be expanded to other areas of Russia, but I agree with those presidents and leaders of higher educational institutions in the Russian Federation who believe that the traditional education, university education in Russia should also continue despite the unified testing system. I have said that certain changes will be made in education as a whole, and this will be one of the priorities in the near future. I have said that college education will see some changes. Let me also say that there will be changes in secondary school education. Specifically, teachers will be paid more for working as class leaders full-time, and there will be an additional payment of 1,000 rubles in addition to their current salary. This will affect practically all teachers. Secondly, there will be additional grants to 10,000 best teachers in the country, every grant worth 100,000 rubles. Thirdly, there will be grants issued for 3,000 schools worth 1 million rubles annually to buy laboratory equipment, to buy textbooks, and also to buy other teaching aids and manuals. Then there will be 5,000 grants issued to school children and students, 50,000 rubles annually for those who are involved in research. So all of this, plus the possibility and the need to change the system of payment, the salary system in the school system, I think will result in improvements. When I speak about the changes in the salary system, I am referring to the possibility of a sectoral system of payment in the schools, so that the salary of a teacher depend not so much on the number of classes he or she teaches, but on the quality of teaching and on other components such as continuity. Ultimately, the purpose is to have less of a load, less of a burden on our children, because I believe that we are really putting too much on their shoulders, and so we will be doing this and other things to improve our education system. What else will change by 2008? Will there be the army reform? My son is 16. What should he be looking forward to? Elizaveta Slepnova from the Kursk region. Starting January the 1st, 2008, the conscription service in Russia, the time will be reduced from 2 years to 12 months. First 6 months in 6 months, so to say, primary military education, and after this the person can either sign a contract to serve for 3 years, or he will just serve 6 months in the troops, in the forces. We believe that those who sign a 3-year contract will have priority rights to enter colleges and university afterwards. Then they will, those who will be receiving their wages will continue to receive those wages as servicemen as they attend courses before entering colleges. By that time, we also will have combat-ready forces such as the Marines and the landing troops and some infantry troops, and in the hotspots, areas of tension, including the Chechen Republic, conscripts will not be serving.
We have a letter from Karachentseva concerning service in the army in Chechnya. Beginning with this year, those who have been called up in 2007 will not be, and in the Interior Ministry will not be serving Chechnya. Pensioner Lyudmila Karachentseva from the Stavropol area complains to the president that their village there's no water. Alas, there is no drinking water. Lyudmila Alexeyevna is an excerpt from the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper. Although I've heard that in the Stavropol, funds have been received for improving the water supply. People have to go 200, 300 meters to fetch water in pails. In general, it's understandable that naturally Lyudmila Karachentseva, the pensioner, is dissatisfied in this way this question was solved. Not to say it was not solved. I must tell you that right now, these days, we're solving choosing a person to serve as governor of Stavropol territory. But these papers have not been sent to Stavropol, will not be sent until this problem is resolved there.
Сложная фамилия. Венгрижинский
complicated. Stanislav Veniaminovich.
Скажите, пожалуйста,
Tell us,
будут ли
please,
увеличены пенсии
will
военным
pensions be
пенсионерам? Если да,
increased for
когда и
military
насколько?
pensioners? When and
С 1
by how much?
января
As of
2006
January the
года
1st,
на 15%,
2006,
так же, как и
by
всем военнослужащим.
15%,
И
as
затем
well as for all
предусмотрено,
servicemen.
в последующее
And
время
subsequently,
увеличение
these pensions will be
пенсий, как
increased
положено по закону,
according
совместно
to
с
law,
увеличением денежного содержания военнослужащих.
along with their pay that they receive.
Зотов
Zotov
Антон Юрьевич,
Anton Yurevich,
услышав ваше выступление
having
по
heard
телевидению о
your
повышении заработной платы
statement
врачам
on
и
TV
учителям, мы с
about
женой
increasing
восприняли
salaries for
и
teachers
дальше
and doctors,
разочарование
we
в
have been
связи с тем,
encouraged.
что
And then there is
в
some
связи с тем,
dissatisfaction
что вот
that
автор
the
этого
author
вопроса,
of this question
врач-нейрохирург,
is
это
a
его не
neurosurgeon.
затронет.
This will
Да,
not
я понимаю
affect a
вашу
neurosurgeon.
Но я уже
I
сказал, что у
understand
нас
your
укомплектованность
concern, but I've
первичного
told
звена
you
составляет всего 56%.
that only 56% of the primary medical personnel, and in the rural, this is only 25 to 30% medical personnel. This is an actual fact that this is our priority, but this does not mean that we must forget about the work in the area of providing medical aid at a very high level, a high technological level, requiring specialized knowledge. And of course, in this area as well, we are taking steps forward in this area. I've already told you we have planned to open up high-tech hospitals and clinics in the provinces of Russia. We must also think about the salaries for these people.
Matveyev
Alexei Leontьев of Kostромskoy region. It's known that as of January the 1st, 2006, all pensioners of the World War II will have a pension of about 2,000. How about us, who are heroes of the Soviet socialist labor? Concerned people in our near neighboring area. I have instructed the government of the Russian Federation, together with the state government, to draw up a draft bill to provide help and assistance to heroes of the socialist labor. I think that this question will be resolved in the immediate future, but this will be resolved in an exclusive procedure. I may have in mind the services of the heroes of socialist labor to our country.
Urov Vasily
Sergeyevich from St. Petersburg. What do you think about the problem of HIV epidemics? Why is so little money being allocated? Many people are worried about this, and public organizations and in the society as a whole are worried about this issue. And it's quite true, and this is quite right to be worried about. It's these statistical research indicates that this is a very acute problem. But nonetheless, it does not carry an epidemic framework. This has been revealed in medical checkups of young people being called up to serve in the army and expectant mothers. But next year, we intend to substantially increase the funding to resolve. If this year 130 million rubles were on a scale of Russia, this is almost nothing. But the increase next year will be by 20 or 30 times, up to $3 billion rubles will be allocated to solve the. All people needing costly medicine will be provided with this. Yershov Viktor Anatolievich, a question. From 1961 to 64, I served in the frontier troops in Sakhalin for 3.5 years. I have returned and I've lost all my hair. I have served my duty to. Why were these 3 years included in my pension? I think that the state has been service by call-up should should be included in the length of service in accordance with the law on pensions. You must then, Viktor Anatolyevich, you should to the pension fund. They are duty-bound to recalculate your pension. Землянуха, Zemlyanukhina Yevgenia Ivanovna. I'm a veteran of the Great Patriotic War. 1968, together with my family, I built a cooperative apartment. At the moment, they are being people, residents of our inhabitants of our apartment house, are being compelled to pay for the land that their house stands on. Must we pay fully for the land or just for reforming our documents? Evgeny Ivanovna and others of the Saratov region who are in such a situation. This is lawlessness, as is written. There is no limit to the lawlessness of your local authority. According to existing legislation, all housing and all the land plots under cooperatives is already your own property. They are compel the authorities to must also pay for the registration of all the documents, and all the local municipal authorities are able to resolve this question by themselves without calling upon the citizens to pay for it. They are duty bound to do this on their own. I'm really surprised. I draw attention of the governor to this issue. Question by SMS. The country has full of gas. We're selling left and right, but half of Russia has not been gasified. This is not quite right. What most of all do you value in life? This is a question that requires large investments and layouts and time in order to resolve these questions. Of course, we must build more and more. I would like to remind you that we spell not all the gas abroad. We do not export it abroad. But since we exported by $160 for 1,000 cubic meters, but in Russia itself it's a little over $30 or $40 for 1,000 cubic meters. So you actually see the difference here. Due to this difference, Gazprom itself is opening up new gas fields and has the possibility to gasify areas and provide gas to the economy and to local consumers at quite low prices due to the high prices received for exported gas. But nonetheless, we must undertake the necessary steps to further gasify improve gas supplies to the entire country. In the near future, Gazprom plans to allocate considerable funds and quite up to 35 billion rubles, and I'm quite sure that these plans will materialize. These plans are being worked out together with the leaders of the different provinces of the Russian Federation. Muhamedzanov Kamil Tagirovich. Камиль Тагирович
полностью воспроизводит один из моих ответов в 2003 году. Он касался обеспечения
one of the questions I've referred to in 2003 concerning the teaching from the municipal level to the state level, namely to the regional levels authorities, because it is already state governed at that level. And he quotes my statement that I made in 2003 and the excerpts from the Constitution that guarantee the right to acquire an education. He also says about the quite low salaries for teachers in the rural level. He gets married, as I understand, is a young teacher. The situation is such that I cannot even buy wedding rings for myself and my future bride. He asks what has been done, specifically by myself, in order to implement those plans that were declared in 2003. Kamil Tagirovich, at the beginning of 2003, neither the regional level of authority, all the more so the municipal authorities, according to the existing legislation, were able to provide support to these rural schools. In 2003, such changes were introduced into the legislation, and in 2003 came into effect. And now all that concerns providing for the teaching process at schools can be supported also from the federal budget. I will repeat this once again. This problem has been closed only from the point of view of creating the legal base for solving these issues. In certain regions where there is enough funding, in rich regions, from the regional level, they're coping with many questions, including purchase of textbooks. People are still spending quite a large, substantial funds to provide textbooks for schools in the rural areas. That is why in this particular area, questions are being resolved and implemented, and I also hope that your promises will also materialize. I hope that you get married with the woman of your choice, in spite of the fact that you material. I hope that this will not be an excuse not to overlook and get married. Your salaries are, I must admit, that your salaries are low indeed. I've told you what plans are being worked out in this area. About 2,000 rubles on the average for a teacher's salary. In certain northern, in the area of Taimyr, up to 15,000 rubles, while in the south of Russia, the teacher's salary is very, very low, about 3,000 or 2,300 rubles. As far as you are from the Amur area, the average teacher salary is 5,200. But the problem for young teachers is absolutely the starting salary is very low. And of course, this must be rectified. I must recall to you, in 2002, the average teacher salary was 2,800. Today, it's 4,860 for August of this year. On the average, that's the average teaching salary. At the end of next, the minimum salary will be 6,000. The way out of here is a new system of payment for the about the sectoral principles I've already mentioned to you. And the last question. Pasnov Ilyich, as a student of a 10th grade and a potential serviceman, I must confess that I'm worried about the situation in the state army. I do not look 100% Slavic, but all other parameters, I come up as a serviceman in the Kremlin regiment. Why do they enroll only persons with a Slavic image? Ilya Ilyich, I do not know why only people, young people of Slavic image. After I've received your questions, I've addressed it to the director of the Federal Security Service. The selection of people from there are only two criteria: health and height, that are being serving in the Kremlin regiment. If you meet these two criteria, this problem is considered. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you've been speaking a lot on behalf of our anchor. You usually held, at the end of the year, you held such talk. And this is a beginning of the political season. September was a turbulent. I would like to ask you about the plans for what plans do you have for the current political season? I remember one of the questions that was asked today. We have now come up to the possibility, on the basis of the results that we have achieved in the economy, on the basis of what we have, the revenues of our budget, that looks quite good. We have a good support in the form of the stabilization fund, the gold and monetary currency reserves of the central bank, that is to pay special attention to pressing questions. Tremendous resources has now had the possibility to fund those areas that previously could not fund, and we now have to establish control how this money is actually spent. We are now adopting a budget for a 3-year period. We're doing this specially so that at the end of 2007, at the beginning of 2008, when the country will be going through a period of political activity, that this would not lead to an explosion, so to speak, of populist statements and declarations. We want now to establish and to coordinate with the parliament and travel together within the framework of this corridor, so that we would not always, we have a lot of money now, let's give it all out. No. Of course we can hand out all this money. First of all, no one will feel it, because it's not really as much as some people think. And secondly, inflation will burst up and will gobble all this up, and there will be an absolutely senseless act. It will harm the economy, and this will actually harm each and every Russian family. It's our task is to retain these positive trends and tendencies, so that these priorities which we have set before us will not only be named as such, but also that the financial and administrative political resources should be concentrated for resolving these issues. We heard about all 3 years. Vladimir Vladimirovich would like to thank you for participating in our program, our direct line call-in show with the President of Russia. We're working in 12 small and large villages, towns and cities, and we thank all those who sent in their questions through called in, SMS, through internet. Thank you, all of you. Thank all of you. All the best to you.